Alright, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, anime mages violate physics. We are going to completely shatter your suspension of disbelief regarding pretty much every magical anime battle you've ever watched. Seriously, if you spent any amount of time watching fantasy animations, reading manga, or immersing yourself in these grand magical novels, you are deeply familiar with the tropes, right? You know the grand incantations, the blinding lights, and the absolutely awe-inspiring destruction. But what if I told you that beneath all those flashy aesthetics, there's a fundamental, glaring error woven into the very fabric of these scenes? Today, we're deconstructing the physics of attack magic and exposing a massive flaw that creators have literally been ignoring for decades.
So, have you ever noticed the glaring physical flaw in every anime magic attack? We've all seen it happen on screen. It's the ultimate anime lie, the catastrophic magical blast that completely ignores a massive visual tell. Just think about your absolute favorite mage character for a second. They stand stoically on the battlefield, they gather a literal ocean of power in their hands, and they release a beam of pure devastation that levels a mountain miles away. It looks undeniably cool, for sure, but from a purely mechanical, physical standpoint, the human body casting that spell is completely missing an unavoidable physical consequence. Something huge should be happening to them, and it just isn't.
Anime magic looks cool, but there is a huge visual cue entirely missing from the screen. This is the core premise that creators of anime, manga, and novels have been actively ignoring. When a mage fires an attack, they are essentially projecting high-mass, high-kinetic energy forward at an extreme velocity. They're creating an explosion originating from their very own palms. Yet the mage on screen remains as still as a statue. To understand exactly why this missing visual cue was such a glaring problem, we kind of have to look at some basic science. We need to look at the undeniable laws of our universe.
Let's lay it out in layman's terms, with Newton's third law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. This isn't just a suggestion, guys, it's the absolute foundation of physics. You simply cannot exert a massive physical force in one direction without an identical amount of force pushing back in the exact opposite direction. Kinetic energy always works in two directions. If you throw something incredibly heavy forward, the sheer act of throwing violently shoves your body backward. It's totally unavoidable.
Think about real-world heavy weaponry. Have you ever seen footage of a soldier firing a regular bazooka? The moment they pull that trigger, they get hit with a powerful backward kick against their shoulder. That's recoil. Now imagine that soldier firing a magical bazooka 100 times stronger than a regular one. Why do you have to imagine that? Because that's exactly what a mage should experience if they cast a super strong attack spell. If a tiny explosive rocket pushes a highly trained soldier backward, the kickback of a magical spell 100 times stronger should be absolutely devastating. That mage should be pushed incredibly far backward.
Let's break this down step by step to really visualize the problem. Simulation 1, Ground Zero. Imagine you are a mage, standing on the ground, ready to cast a powerful attack magic. Your boots are planted. When you unleash that magical blast at an enemy, you are generating a literal explosion from your hands. Because of the sheer force of that powerful blast leaving your palms, you should be pushed violently backward. That kinetic energy doesn't just vanish into the ether, it transfers directly into your arms, right down your spine, and into the dirt. In a realistic physical simulation, there are 3 strict, inescapable steps to casting like this. Step 1. You plant your boots deep into the earth just to get a foothold. Step 2. You cast a catastrophic magical blast forward. Step 3. You experience massive backward recoil. The energy leaving your hands forcefully shunts your entire body weight in reverse. But anime creators entirely skip step 3. They show the catastrophic blast, and then they show the mage completely unbothered, totally ignoring the brutal physical kickback that should theoretically break their posture.
So the crucial point here is that by entirely skipping the recoil, the attack magic in anime becomes a huge logical leap, and a complete lie. The creators of anime, manga, and novels ignored this law of physics entirely. Why? Well, they prioritized the flashy aesthetic of an unstoppable stoic warrior over the brutal, messy reality of kinetic force. It's a visual cheat code. It's a shortcut that violates real physics purely to make the character look effortlessly cool. But honestly, once you notice it, you can never unsee how ridiculous it really is.
Time and time again, across almost every magical franchise, mages are shown standing perfectly still while unleashing atomic-level kinetic energy. This makes absolutely no logical sense. In reality, because of the overwhelming force of the powerful blast, the mage should be pushed violently backward, sliding through the dirt, their boots carving deep trenches into the earth just to keep from being blown completely away by their own power. They should look like they are struggling to hold back a hurricane, not posing for a casual photo shoot.
Surviving the recoil of your own spell on the ground would be a completely brutal ordeal. A mage down in the mud must use their physical weight as a heavy brace. They desperately need the sheer friction from the dirt to absorb the shock of the spell. Think about this. If they tried to cheat by casting a rigid magical barrier right behind their back to stop themselves from moving, it would be a fatal mistake. The crushing G-force caused by the magic pushing them backward would slam them into that immovable wall, and their fragile human body would be caught right in the middle. Without bleeding off that kinetic energy by sliding backward, the sheer pressure would instantly fracture their ribcage.
Now let's take the simulation to the next level. What happens when we take this to the sky? If surviving recoil on solid Earth requires intense friction, digging your heels in, and desperately bracing your body weight against the ground, what happens when we completely remove the ground from the equation? Let's look at how this physical flaw magnifies exponentially.
Simulation 2, the aerial escalation. We've all seen this classic trope play out during the climax of a show. Imagine an anime mage flying in the air, casting a super strong attack spell downward toward the enemy. Imagine the jaw-dropping destruction that the spell could cause down below. It's the ultimate heroic aesthetic, looking down from the clouds and raining literal fire upon an army.
But let's talk about the reality of mid-air blasts. Up there in the empty sky, there is zero ground friction to anchor the caster. There is no dirt to plant your boots into, no walls to brace against. When that massive kinetic energy is released forward, there is a violent, unmitigated backward thrust pushing directly against the mage. With nothing solid to brace against, the mage is at the absolute mercy of their own recoil.
Yet, what do we actually see on screen? The anime shows the mage staying perfectly still in the air, without being pushed backward even an inch. They just hover majestically, completely undisturbed, firing endless barrages of explosive magic. It completely divorces the action from its physical consequence. See, that is a major flaw in the anime magic that completely shatters any sense of grounded reality.
In a real fight, that mage should have been tumbling to the sky, unable to recover its balance. The exact millisecond they fire that super spell, the heavy recoil would instantly launch their fragile body backward. They wouldn't look heroic or stoic in the slightest. They would look like a balloon rapidly deflating, thrown helplessly through the air by the sheer force of their own attack.
The contrast here couldn't be sharper. On one hand, we have the beautiful anime myth, floating gracefully while firing a super spell without moving a single muscle out of place. But the physical reality dictated by Newton's third law, you're getting violently blasted backward out of control. The difference between the aesthetic myth we are constantly fed and the brutal physics of reality just makes the standard anime tropes feel incredibly lazy.
The absolute verdict of this explainer is simple and undeniable. Anime magic is a lie. It violates logic and physics. The magic systems we watch are fundamentally broken because they treat kinetic force like it only exists when it's convenient for the plot, completely ignoring the most basic law of action and reaction. So after deconstructing all of this, pulling apart the threads of these broken magical systems, you might be wondering, so where can you read a fantasy story that actually respects real physics and logic? Is there a magical world out there where creators don't take these lazy shortcuts? The answer is a resounding yes.
If you genuinely want to read a novel which obeys logic and respects real physics, you have to check out the underrated web novel, My Certification Level Keeps Rising, But All I Do Is Laze Around. This specific story is the perfect cure for readers who are completely tired of fake anime physics and want to immerse themselves in a fantasy world built on rigorous, logical rules.
Why does this novel absolutely change the game? Well, because inside its pages, magic strictly obeys Newton's third law. The mages in the story actually experience and have to actively mitigate brutal physical recoil. When they cast powerful spells, they slide backward, their boots tear up the dirt, and they suffer the intense G-force of their own power. The combat tactics aren't just flashing lights to look pretty, they are entirely grounded in real science, physics, and tactical positioning. You get to experience a magic system where every spell carries a real physical consequence. It makes the battles infinitely more intense, much more grounded, and completely believable. Why? Because the characters aren't just casually waving their hands to fight enemies, they are simultaneously fighting gravity, momentum, and the brutal, punishing backlash of their own kinetic power. Do yourself a massive favor. Step away from the broken, illogical anime physics and dive into a world that actually gets it right. Download Web Novel now and search for My Certification Level Keeps Rising, But All I Do Is Laze Around. It's a masterclass in world building, and you will absolutely not regret it. I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder today. If magic were real, would your body actually be strong enough to survive the recoil of your own spell, or would you just break your own ribs? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and always keep questioning the physics of the worlds you love.